Well, I'll even say this. It's very logical for us to take time out to speak about the death of Sarah. This is a very important piece. Sarah is extremely important. As we talked about many times, culturally speaking, with us, as much as misogyny is automatically thrown on us in our belief system and against the gender, the wife is extremely important. Because the husband is nothing without his wife. The wife is nothing without her husband. That's culture. I'm not saying how you guys see things today, and I'm not saying that you're nothing, and if your wife does you dirty or your husband does you dirty, then you got to just stay with them no matter what, because you're absolutely nothing without them. But hear what I'm saying, if you're in a marriage, two are one. Right, so for example, Yahweh, although he's the creator of us, he's the maker of heaven and earth, right, one might say he doesn't need you, but Yahweh says that you are his wife. How you doing, Sister Beck? Right, Yahweh says that you are his wife. So if you are his wife, then that means that you are one with him. So whenever he's mentioned, it means whoever his wife is mentioned as well. Right? And Yahweh, Israel, is the wife of Yahweh. That means he is our husband. Right? We're talking spiritually, correct? So anything that we receive, or anytime somebody speaks of us, it reflects on our husband. That's why it's extremely important that we value Yahweh, that we value our walk and our talk, belief system, that we don't ever forget who we represent. Aman, we are the wife of Yahweh. We're all married. Even if we don't, in our culture, really have a term like single, right? You know, single being, oh, well, I'm just out here. Everybody's married to the Most High. Some of us also are married to someone else on earth. And for us in our culture, sex is marriage, marriage is sex. Spiritually speaking, there is the intimacy, there is the bedchamber that's undefiled as well. And so when Sarah passes away, this is a huge moment in our family, in our culture, in our story, not even in his story, in our story. Many persons just kind of go, oh, Sarah passed away, and then let's go to the next thing. But you can see here, there's a whole chapter, right, where Abraham is dealing with Sarah's death. Matter of fact, it says that Abraham came to where Sarah was and mourned, right? He took time out to mourn. It's very important, like he took time out to mourn. There's a lot of observations we can get out of this text. And I wanted to speak, I said Genesis 22, excuse me, Genesis 23, right? Genesis 22 basically shows us Isaac being sacrificed, or Isaac supposedly being sacrificed, but then there was a ram in the bush. And then after that, we see where Rebecca's bloodline comes from. So we actually know the bloodline and how related Rebecca is to Isaac, right? So that's in the end of Genesis 22. But Genesis 23 starts off with Sarah losing her life, and Abraham is in mourning. And Sarah has been part of the whole story the whole time, from the time we met Abraham, right? From the time we see Abraham, whether it's in Jasher, right? Whether it's in Genesis, from the time Abraham is mentioned, his wife is mentioned, right? So we don't really know anything about Abraham outside of him and Sarah. We know who his father is, we know where he lived, right? But we don't really know anything outside of Abraham and Sarah. We don't know really anything outside of Sarah, or about Sarah outside of Abraham, right? So this is somebody they've been together, and you see that she's 137 years old when she passes away, right? Blessed to have a very long life. Y'all was already bringing this up down there. He said he was going to start bringing the numbers down to about 120 years, right? How you doing, Dolly? How you doing, Kofi Prospect? How you doing, Sister Michelle? How you doing, Brother Javon? Hopefully you're staying safe out here. Streets. Who's the one? Nanadu. Everybody coming in. Dottie, VUK. I'm sure if I'm saying that correctly, right? But there's an importance in that. There's an importance in that we catch that really, for the first time, Abraham, at least in what we've been reading and discussing about him, is without his wife. For the very first time, so this is a huge turning point for us. This is a huge turning point for Abraham. Abraham or Abram, he had Sarai, right? But he was Abraham or Abraham. He set off, right? His whole life, we see most of his life, a huge percentage of his life, is with his wife. And so he's about 10 years older than her. So at this point, he would either be 146 or 147 at this point in life, right? So, and we basically see them start being told that they're promised to have a child about in the 60s or 70s, right? So even with what we discovered in men, we got what, about 70 to 80 years of these two trying to be obedient, having some slip-ups, some hiccups, of course, but trying to be obedient and trying to have a promised child, and then having a long period of time where they had to get their marriage back on track, right? Because once Isaac was born, Ishmael was ejected from the situation, and so was Hagar. How you doing, Brother Richard? Brother Richard, how you doing, Aisha? So marriage is extremely important, and we don't even know much about Abraham outside of his marriage. We know that he'll live longer. We know that he actually will have other children. We know that he'll actually get remarried. But at this point in his life, all we've known about Abraham is tied and connected to his wife Sarah. That's it. All we've known about him. And I think that's extremely important in our culture. I'm not trying to say that you can't be known, if you're single or something like so-called single, that word they use, single, or if you're not married, or if you're not called to be married, because not everybody's called to be married, but we're all married to the Most High. So whether we're talking about, being married to a physical person and the Most High, or just the Most High, every single one of us is attached to what Yah, or what, who we're married to, right? Every single one of us is attached to who we're married to. How you doing, love me, right? Once again, all of us are attached, regardless of how you feel about it. This is why, as much as we don't like it, there is truth in the fact that what one of us does in our diaspora, all of us do, right? We should be more upset, right? And what I mean by that, if you don't get what I'm saying, it's like, a black man did this, all black people are evil, right? A black woman did this, all black people are evil. When a black man or woman does something positive, maybe there's something nice about you, right? The problem with it is, my problem, to be honest with it, I don't have a problem with that. My issue is more so when somebody does something wrong, or does something right, and we won't, and if that's what we're going to do, that's the standard, and keep the same energy, So for me, if you say that, I don't know, if you say that there's a black man out there that's got 5 wives, multiple children, doesn't take care of them all, is bad with business, etc., doesn't care about his community, blah, blah, says some falsehoods and stuff, and you say all black men therefore do that, then keep the same energy with Donald Trump. I'm not a Republican or Democrat, by the way. I'm just saying I think that's fair. You know what I'm saying? If that's what we're doing with one, we do it with all. How you doing, Sister Shirley? That's when I have an issue with it. How you doing, Sister Shirley? Sister Shirley and Sister Shirley. Como está bien, gracias por tu presencia. All of us have this thing, to be honest, right? To where we actually represent something greater than ourselves. And if persons realize that, then a lot of stuff goes by the wayside. See, the rap artist who goes, like Lil Wayne, who says, I'm not anybody's role model. Everybody should do whatever they want to do. And I'll take that to the grave, whatever, yada, yada, yada. Okay, Lil Wayne, that makes sense until all these rappers are trying to become punchline rappers with no substance, and all of them are on lean for 10, 15 years straight, and out of you comes somebody like Drake, to where you don't check up yourself and things like that, because you got a responsibility to you're supposed to be the number one person in the game. So whoever's number one in the game, you represent. Everybody gonna follow you. You're the leader. Why did everybody want to be like Tupac for a long time? Because you're a leader. Why did everybody want to be like DMS for a long time? Because you're a leader, right? Why does everybody still want to be like Jay-Z? Because you're a leader. Regardless of how you feel about them, I'm just telling you the way it goes, right? Is that you don't just represent yourself. You represent a diaspora, right? And so the closeness that Abraham and Sarah have is something not only much to be desired, but something that should be studied. There's much integrity that's there. And watch this, really, if we look at the word integrity or integral, This is why it's important that you be married to the Most High as well. But there's an integrity that's lost when Sarah's lost. Somebody goes up. See, I was waiting for you to mess up. There's an integrity. You say he doesn't have integrity anymore? No, that's why he's got to be married to the Most High, and he's married to Sarah as well. What I'm telling you is when Sarah passed away, they were integrated. So when Sarah passed away, integrated, integral, something that's integrated or integrity is something that's one. Uh-oh. We just lost TikTok soon. Alright. Hopefully you guys are back. But it's stuck off and on. Yeah, that's about the best I'm able to do with signal today on TikTok. Really, either place. It took us a minute to just get in the signal. I'm in a bad place as far as storm and everything. Even though it doesn't sound like it. All the birds and everybody are cool over here in this area. Maybe they used to storm, I don't know. But there's an integrity that's lost. When Sarah's lost, there's an integrity that's lost. Because the two were one. How you doing, Sister Monica? I don't know how many of you've seen it when somebody, this happened in my family with my grandparents on my father's side. You know, when one person, they've been married for 50 years, 60 years, whatever, and then one passes away, and then sometimes the other will pass away right after them. Because there's an integrity, there's a oneness, and it's really difficult to move past, right? Now, if you have, I don't think that everybody should just give up on it or whatever. I don't think that's something that we should just so-called romanticize too much, right? I would pray that if something happened to me, obviously my family keeps on moving, right? Have a little bit of time to mourn, so be it, but I'm not the end-all, be-all of everything. That being said, though, there's an integrity, there's a oneness. I say this, and my wife is on, how you doing, babe? But I say this even when she's not on. I say this all the time. It's not the first time I say something like this. You know, there's many times where, even though I haven't known her my whole life, I would, in my head, try to place her in that's in the present. It does, when I do this because you're one, right? And if you're one with somebody spiritually, physically, emotionally, psychologically, etc., no matter what's going on, the longer, even if you fight with somebody, you'll discover that you guys have a oneness, right? There's things that she knows about me that others would never know. There's things that she knows about me that I don't even necessarily know about me. She sees them, and I might not even get the full gist of what I'm doing because she's able to see me while being one, but at the same time see me from the outside looking in. So there's an integrity that's there. You know, there's a feeling that's there that we have that go beyond just, oh yeah, you know, we happen to live in the same place or we happen to visit the same places and things like that. Thank you for the love. How you doing, Sean? Right? There's an integrity. And so when Sarah is gone, there's part of Abraham that's gone. He mourns, right? And even when you look at where he goes, he keeps asking, I think he says this at least 3 times in Genesis 23. I believe he says it 3 separate times where he says, I know he says it at least twice, but he says, hey, I would like to purchase a plot of land to bury my wife, to bury my family, to bury the dead. And he says, I would like for it to be a place that, he says, I would like this to be a place that you guys, or that I cannot see the dead. I cannot see their grave. I ain't going to down with the spirit. Right? That's how much it grieves him in dealing with the passing away of his wife, right? Like, that's how much it grieved him that he literally said, I want to buy a plot of land because I want to literally get something that I don't have to see her, a sign of her being gone, right? He's come to mourn. He's going to mourn her body, right? But he said, I want to bury her in a place because it's so difficult for me to see. And he also says for family in general, but he says, it's so difficult for me to deal with this. I don't even want to be in the presence of the grave, right? I know this person will go back and visit the grave. I know there's some persons that even bury their dead in their land, right? Well, Abraham specifically here is saying, this thing dealing with the loss of my wife is so difficult, right? How you gonna eat it? He says it's so difficult that I would rather I'll pay however much I need to. I'll give her a grand space. I'll let her have this cave and turned into a mausoleum and all that stuff. But I'd rather not see this every day. And it's a very solemn chapter. It's something that we usually kind of skip right over. There's a lot of names even that are mentioned here that we don't necessarily go into today. But it's something that easily can be just skipped right over. And a lot of us do because we don't even think about the loss of this man's wife. It's so crazy. Yeah, these Roman antics. Yeah, how you doing, brother? Right. But he literally is telling us and telling them, we're seeing here in Scripture that this hurts. This is not a typical, and I don't know if there's any such thing as a typical death, but this is something that stands out. He's saying, I can't, he's seen people die, but he says, I can't deal with this. This is on a whole nother level. He's lost his wife. How you doing, Brother Warren? He's lost his wife. How you doing, Jose? You hear what I'm saying? He's lost his wife. This is a different type of loss. Even when you deal with divorce, by the way, anybody who's been through a divorce will tell you, right, that even if you're mad, you're angry about, I know there's some, well, maybe not anybody. There's some persons that tell, I be feeling, to each their own, I be feeling there's somewhat of a, I won't say a lie per se, I think there's somewhat a person's over correcting when they be like, oh yeah, I got a divorce, I partied and blah, blah, this and that. I think that's over something because divorce hurts. Divorce is akin to killing something. Yeah, hidden differently, right? Like divorce is in the same family as killing somebody. That's what divorce is. Divorce is actually betrayal. If you didn't know where the Romans get the word divorce from, or the word we get the word divorce from, it actually is talking about somebody who's a traitor. If somebody were to run away during battle, right? If somebody were to just go AWOL all of a sudden, and we got to go to battle and stuff like that, or somebody just betrays us, if somebody they would call that a divorce. And when they caught you, if they ever caught you divorcing yourself from the army, you had to die, right? Because we couldn't depend on you, and you hurt us, and we might have even lost the battle depending on how and when you divorced us. So divorce is akin to taking the life of somebody. When you get a divorce, I know there's a lot of, but that's why it hurt. That's why, especially in divorce is one of those things that's really difficult, because what happens is for a lot of persons, it'd be one thing if somebody were to die, but when you get a divorce, that person you were one with is ripped from you, so you already hurt him from the ripping. Then that person supposedly dies in your life. How you doing, Wavy Daily? But then what happens after that person dies in your life, what comes up next is this. You might run into that person. If you got children, you might have to see that person, right? You might have to set up visitation. You might have to go to court and see that person. You might be going around the grocery store just thinking you're going to go shopping, and it's been 2 months, and you think you're over the person, and then you see the person pull around with their shopping cart, with their buggy, whatever you call it, right? With their pop, their soda, whatever you call it in the cart, and you see it, and you remember that that's something that you'd like to drink, something that's small, and it can bring something back. It's somebody who's supposed to be dead to you, but at the same time, they're still around, they're still alive. Right? How you doing? Yeah. So divorce is something that's really crucial, but death. That's what divorce really is. It's a death, right? That's why a lot of you remember your first. Because sex is marriage, marriage is sex. You were only called to have sex with one person for the entirety of your life. Something can happen to go awry, of course, but that's what's supposed to happen. So no matter how much blah, blah, whatever, no matter how much you despise this person, whatever, you'll remember it. Why? Because when you split from that person, you got a divorce. And however, I'm not here to body shame, I'm not here to do the body count thing, but however many persons that you end up laying down with again, you remember it. And even if you can't remember every single person or whatever, there's DNA memory, there's certain things that are there, there's certain values, there's certain ties that you have, there's certain energy, if you will. That person's like to describe that word energy. Well, that's true to a certain degree, there's certain energy that's there. Because sex is marriage, marriage is sex. And so to lose out on that, some persons do that on a regular basis. Like, hey, I'm going out with you, but this is not serious or whatever, I just need a boyfriend or girlfriend. Really, it's kind of like having to have break open in case of emergency type. You got a person genitalia in a glass, break open in case of emergency, right? You have persons that do, who will excuse bad behavior by saying, it's better to marry than it is to burn. Sure, but marry according to the word. Don't just be out here doing whatever, just because you feel like it, or just because it's better to marry. No, it's better to marry according to the will of Yah. We were just talking about this. I think this might have been yesterday evening in our ministerial staff meeting, and we were going over some scripture in depth, and we were talking, and I think it was Psalm 18, verse 24, if I'm not mistaken, where David says that he's done things righteously and clean, so legally and lawfully, but he did so in the sight of Yah. So if Yah can't look upon it as righteous, then David said it's not clean, it's not legal. And what happens with a lot of persons is you get into these marriages or into these relationships, into these organizations, whatever, and you don't make sure that it's pleasing in the sight of Yah, right? But going back to Abraham and Sarah in Genesis 23, Yah found favor, right? Their marriage found favor in his sight. He protected their marriage, right? Their marriage is now gone because Sarah's gone, but Yah protected their marriage, right? If you look at it, it was as we talked about so much, and how in the series and how much we talked about it a long time. Marriage is extremely important, and how one treats it shows how marriage is so important. What is it that is it 1 Timothy chapter 3 says? Somebody go to 1 Timothy chapter 3 and see what it says there in verse 1, verse 2. You'll discover how important it is. If you don't know what I'm talking about, when you go there, what you'll discover is it says very clearly, very quickly, right? It says there about marriage. This is what it says. You ready? It says, if one desires the office of a prelate or an assembler or a pastor, he desires a tabak or an excellent work. If you would like to become a pastor, prelate, assembler, leader of a congregation, etc., you desire an excellent work. You do, by the way, not an excellent faith, an excellent work. So pastors, you got to work, right? Pastor is not just an office, it's a work, okay? So there's some work involved. That being said, if you desire this office, it's an excellent work you desire. That being said, what does it say right after that? It says, if you desire that work, this is what you're supposed to do. It says, you must first be blameless, meaning that we shouldn't, according to the law, you shouldn't be able to set a bunch of stuff in your life that makes us look at you sideways, really anything, as much as it's possible. You're a human being, so we'll find things here or there. But we should be able to look at your life, look at your character, and look at how you roll, and we should be able to look at your story, and his story, and be able to see some things and go, okay, this person is, on the up and up. Then it says after that, you should be the husband of one wife, which means that God looks at your assembly, and when he's looking at your pastor, he's seeing, can this joker take care of his wife? How does he do concerning marriage? That's what Yah literally is looking at. One of the things he puts in the word. Read your Bible, it'll bless you. He says, if you want to become a pastor, I'm looking at how you deal with marriage. Doesn't mean that you can't have hiccups here or there. Doesn't mean you can't have ever been divorced twice, 3 times. I don't know that between you and Yah. You got to figure out why that happened. But you should be able to look at your marriage to determine if you can lead others. Abraham and Sarah found favor in Yah's sight as a marriage couple, as a married couple, as being one. To the point to where when Sarah says, Hagar's got to go the second time, the Most High says, let her go. When she says, Ishmael's got to go the second time, the Most High says, let her go. Or let him go, excuse me. Because Yah honors the marriage. He honored the seed that came out of them. And even though Yah would still honor Ishmael when he cried out in the wilderness, right? He still said the promise is what came between the marriage. Anything that came outside of it, he's like, I'm not really beholden to that. That's how important it is. How you doing, Sister Shooter? That's how important this marriage piece is. How you doing, D? That's how vital marriage is. That's how awesome marriage is. This is what marriage means to the Most High. Being one, the character. Now, what about your marriage to the Most High? If I can just take a little break there. What about your marriage to the Most High? Because whatever you do, he does. And whatever he does, you do. He said, you're a fellow heir. Whatever you hush for against, you get. All right, be safe when you travel. Right? Whatever you get, he gets. Whatever he gets, you get. I don't think persons really comprehend the power in that. The reason why I can say, I curse you in the name of Yahweh, is because Yahweh has the power to curse. And as long as you're in line with your husband, if your husband would curse him, then why wouldn't you? The reason why you can say, I bless you, Atsham Yahweh, is because, right, Barak, Atsham Yahweh. The reason why you can say that is because your husband can bless. Right? But watch this, be careful, because some of you be in the wrong position. Some persons out there, they be cheating, they be doing this religiosity, that religiosity, this belief system, that belief system, under this teaching, under that teaching, under this, blah, blah, and they're not making sure it's the same, they're not making sure it's locked in with our husband. And so somebody will say something, and if you're not careful, you could be cheating on your husband. I know there's some of us, we were raised, it is what it is. We have dirty minds. I have a dirty mind to a certain degree that I have to continue to wash all the time. It is what it is. We're over-sexualized when we come up. That being said, right, the same word for word in Hebrew, zara, is the same word for seed, zara. The same word for word and seed in Hebrew is the same word for sperm. I know somebody's going to take this out of context. Somebody's going to laugh about it. It is what it is. I get it. I'm juvenile in that regard too. But I hope you get the context, right? That the seed, the zara, even the sperm of Yah, is what literally is impregnated in you. And so whatever, right, whatever word is put in your belly and now going through the gestational period and it grows, and the myostosis and all that, and now whatever's in your belly, it comes out of your mouth. Right? And so it should only be the zara, or the word, the seed of your husband. If you don't sound like your husband, then you're cheating. Right? You ever thought about that? Like, a way that a lot of cats get caught cheating is you'll say something and somebody be like, I don't say that. You'll say, oh yeah, you know, we were at such and such the other day, and somebody be like, I've never been to such and such. Right? By what you say, we might be able to go, oh, wait a minute, time out. Are you cheating? You know? Wait a minute, time out. I don't know nothing about that. Right? I'm not saying you can't make a mistake. I'm saying there's some very clear ones where somebody be like, oh yeah, you know, just last week, we was at, remember, we was over in, last week, we was over in, I don't know, we was over at Niagara Falls, remember? And somebody like, I wasn't in Niagara Falls last week, I was in, I was in San Francisco. Or akin to somebody calling the wrong name or something like that too, right? You know, but we can hear very clearly, wait a minute, that's not my, matter of fact, remember the word name means authority. So somebody calls out the wrong name, what you're basically saying is that I'm never authorized, I'm not even authorized under that. Whose authority are you under? See, it goes deeper than just what we think about only in the moment and how we're mad and we're tensed up and ready to fight. How you doing, Fannie Lou, excuse me, right? You named after Fannie Lou Hamer? Or you just named Fannie Lou? Nice name. How you doing? Is it Evie Smiles? I hope I'm saying that right. Evie Smiles? But that's why that attacks you there, because remember the word name, Sham, it means authority. So when somebody says that you did something, or there's another name that's called per se, even the word call means invited. So to invite another authority into the room that shouldn't be defiled, it's problematic. And how you doing, Dr. King Kirby? Right? So it becomes problematic. Right? So the word that's in you, right? Even with Sarah and Abraham, if you recall, and this was in an evil fashion, but remember, agreement is agreement. You can be in agreement and still get some wicked stuff done. You're going to be in agreement and get some righteous stuff done. Remember that when we talk about what happened with the Pharaoh and what happened with King Abimelech, we might have the signal taken care of. I don't know. Y'all pray for us. If somebody's on YouTube, let me know. For those who are still there, I know there's only a couple of us still there because apparently the signal's that bad. Is it better on YouTube or still the same? Is anybody on YouTube? Looks like we might have lost everybody. It's working again? Okay. All right. Praise God. All right. Thank you, babe. Wherever you might be. She was able to pull the proverbial rabbit out the hat. As a matter of fact, ta-da, Abba. Thank you, Father, for helping with the wine. It's up for the moment. It's better. Okay. Yeah. We'll take better for now. Thank you, babe. Love you. Thank you again. Alrighty. Okay. Alrighty. So, I'm on. So getting back to this. So the husband and the wife, extremely important, right? This relationship between husband and wife, extremely important. This relationship between husband and wife, extremely important. This what? This relationship between husband and wife, extremely important. What one does, the other does. Period. If you're in the kingdom, if you're in the Shamayam, kingdom of heaven, right, or heavenly kingdom, the Shamayam, we were just going over this yesterday. Let me be obedient to what I just taught. The Shamayam, right, in the kingdom of heaven, then you need to, or the kingdom out of heaven even, you must recognize that what you do, right, you are the Malach. In essence, Israel is the Malachachim, the female governor, the female ruler, and Yahweh, not Yehashua, right, but Yahweh is Malachit, he is the male ruler, or the masculine ruler, if you will. How you doing, yes, there? How you doing, Sister Joy? Alrighty. So it's important that we catch these things in the marriage. And Sarah passing away is a huge part, because so many different things in Abraham's life have now changed. We even will see it with Isaac, when we keep on reading. Isaac, when we start talking about his marriage and his relationship with his wife, or what leads to his wife, Isaac basically, what Abraham realizes, you know, Abraham mourning and going through all this stuff, Abraham realizes, you know what, my son needs a wife, not just because I'm getting older, but also my son had to go to the movement since his mother passed away. Right? So Isaac had a wife in his life, just wasn't his wife, it was his mother. His mother has passed away. I can speak to that, by the way. When my mother passed away, you know, that's everything I knew about any kind of wife, womanhood, scripture even. You know, she was my teacher as well. Everything I knew passed away with her. And it was rough. How you doing, Sister Austin? It was rough to me. Still is. I mean, I can tell every once in a while, you know, Mother's Day is coming up. It's usually a rough day. Sometimes I make it through the sermon on Mother's Day. Sometimes not so much. Right? Because she still means a lot. You know, I first of all wouldn't be here without her. You know, even what I'm doing now, more than likely never takes place if I don't have a mother who loves me and inspires me and speaks well of me, even when I probably didn't deserve it, but she never saw that as that. She was the prodigal mother, if you will. That is, no matter how many times I left into foolishness, she always allowed her son to come back into righteousness, you know? And, you know, so even Isaac, as we'll see later on, Rebecca, when she comes on the scene, is a wife. She helps, she can't replace Sarah. Never, you know, never that. The wife can't replace the mother, but she can do things. She can become not only a mother to his children, but can do things that his mother can't do. She can be a wife in areas that's there, right? She takes it to the next level. And so Isaac literally comes out of depression when he comes out of his tent and sees his wife. I mean, that's a word. That's a bar for somebody. How you doing, Leonardo Jimmy? Right? That's a bar. Or Grenada. Probably Grenada. You know, where literally it's the wife that helps to bring Isaac out of his tent. And she's not even his wife yet, although Abraham sent for her, and Abraham's servant tested her, and Abraham's servant now bringing her to him. But when he comes out of the tent and sees Rebekah, it is his wife that actually brings him out of the depression. And he's able to be faithful to the scripture now, right? Excuse me. I don't know why I'm having this is okay. This is Bible 101. Excuse me. He's to live by the scripture that tells us what? For this cause will a man which leaves Aisha, husband, leave his mother and father, and cleave to his Aisha, his wife. Hey, how you doing? To everything wrong with action in place from all prayers, all players are put in position to pray. So you have a husband who's been raised to be a husband, doesn't have a wife, had a mother who raised him, his mother was a wife. He loses the mother, so when he loses the mother, he loses what he knows to be a wife, right? So now he loses his mother, he loses the wife. When he loses the wife, he goes into depression. All of a sudden, he gets a wife that's his wife, and now when he comes out of his tent and he sees a wife, he's no longer depressed, right? That's the power of a wife. And so even though we kind of just skip over Genesis 22, we're just like, yeah, you know, Sarah passed away, no, there's a lot that's there. When Abraham loses Sarah, he lost himself. He will never be, he was never the same after he met his wife, and he was never the same after he lost. This is the power of marriage. Not just any marriage. See, before somebody goes, well, I was married, and you know, yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't a biblical one. I'm not even saying you were the problem. I'm saying if I look at your marriage and it didn't last and y'all left out, some of y'all shouldn't even got divorced, but for all of us who did or whatever, if we look back, we probably could say it wasn't necessarily what y'all wanted. You see what I'm saying? A lot of persons will talk bad about marriage or whatever. I promise you, if I look at your marriage is not what y'all want. Take it to the left, right? So marriage is designed for two to become one. And for two, watch this. Can I say something just as anti-Will Smith? It is what it is. I know Will Smith taught y'all this or whatever. This is a lot from put it here. You know how Will Smith and everybody was so busy being like, and Jada was so busy being like, and then come to find out Jada was looking for somebody else to fulfill what Will didn't do? I'm going to give you something that's a lie that they both told you, right? Will was the one that was more bold-faced than Jada, okay? He sat there on national television. I forget what show. It could have been the Oprah show. Could have been whatever. They was making their rounds back in the day. And he came out. He told Joe. He said, "Hey, it's not my job to make you happy. It's not my responsibility necessarily for everything my wife does. But what you there for if you're not gonna help somebody be happy?" This problem, I know there's somebody in the spirit, I can feel it. Somebody in the flesh, I can feel it in my stomach. Somebody's like, I don't like that. That's you being a sinner. What, my husband? You want a cookie? I'm supposed to go ahead. Yeah, you are supposed to, as a wife, you're supposed to make your husband feel better about it. Yes, as a husband, your wife should feel better in your presence. Your wife should feel like if she got great news, something in her should want to tell you first. When he comes home from a long day, or she comes home from a long day, they should see something in the house that makes them feel better. Yeah, that's on you. How you doing, Brother Craig? See, watch this. The standard is not all this religiosity, because all these religions out here, not just under people. See, you get it twisted. Will Smith, he was feeding you religion too. You think that somebody got to be in the pulpit. Right? But you hear all these different religions concerning relationships. But what about righteous relationships? What did y'all say? What is his thing? Does Yah love you enough Because you're supposed to be his wife. So let us ask you as a wife, as your husband's wife, does y'all love you enough to make you happy? Uh-oh. Brother Louis, they ain't gonna like this part. Right? Does y'all love you enough to make you happy? Well, if he loves you enough to make you happy, and that's the standard, then why aren't you trying to make your spouse happy? What? You want to cookie? You're supposed to do this. No, no, no. Every time, you'll be the first person to say, you know what? The fact that y'all let me live to see another day. The fact that he let me see the sunrise. The fact that he let me breathe is enough. If he never does another thing for me, and then your spouse comes home, and you come home, and your wife has named you all this food, and you just like, whatever. Right? Or you come back, and your husband is paying the bill. That's what you're supposed to do. You got this twisted. This is why 1 John chapter 4, after it says, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is the God of him," right? And if you know not how to love, and you don't know love, then you don't know Elohim, for Elohim is love, and Yahweh a couple, right? Well, keep on going. Down in chapter 4 later on, it says, "How can you say that you love Yahweh who you've never seen, but you don't show love to your brother that you see every day?" This is integrity. This is oneness. Not just speaking the word, but living it. I don't know who that is. I think I've heard the name, but I don't know who that is. All right? Not just speaking the word, but living it. A lot of cats can talk a lot of stuff. But do you live it? All right? One thing that I've learned, this is why we try to make sure that we help our community out as much as possible. Right? I've learned very quickly, right, that especially with you guys have really shown me a lot and how much you guys show love to my family in action, not just in word, but in deed as well, right? And word as well. You guys speak a lot of great stuff over us too. Don't get that twisted, right? But hear what I'm saying, right? I've learned as well, hey, what are the differences between us and somebody else? If we say we're supposed to help each other, such as we have, we give unto thee. So if we can give something to you, President of Burkina Faso. I'm sorry, I don't know why the last name escaped me. I love a lot of stuff that he's doing. I mean, he's not really worried about the spiritual side as much, but a lot of stuff he's doing is in line with the word. So yeah, most definitely. I posted one of the things with somebody talking about, I think a couple of things we're talking about. But yeah, I think he's somebody to be studied, somebody that we should admire. And as Israelites trying to be nation builders, I think that he's showing us a blueprint, which others have shown us in times past. A lot of times we don't protect them. My hope and prayer for, I'll get right back on track, I'm sorry, but now I know what you're talking about. Just real quick, my hope and prayer for Ibrahim is that he be protected. That's what he needs to be more than anything else. His mindset is correct. His heart is correct. He's building stuff for the people. He's making sure education is there. He's saying we have our own resources while we're paying somebody else and going out of pocket to ship our resources out to somebody else. And they're talking about how poor we are and how we can't afford what we shipped out. He got a lot of great things going on. But he needs to be protected like many other leaders. That's one of the things we don't do with a lot of our great leaders. Malcolm X wasn't protected, right? Even if he didn't want to be in the instance, still, no, Malcolm, we need to be protected at all costs, right? We protect Jade Elliott and Tim Wise more. We protect, even though they don't need as much protection as we do, but we protect them. And no shade. I love what they both have to say for the most part. Jade Elliott and Tim Wise, with the whole LGBTQ plus stuff, I think it's a little much. So yeah. But I definitely, I think that he's a great example. I hope he's protected, right? Lumumba was going to be great, and then they literally disintegrated his body to the point where they sent a tooth back to him, to be protected, Right? But Lumumba was great. Kwame Nkrumah, who was one of my, I don't know if I have heroes per se anymore. I don't like to use that word, but somebody that I look up to. And he was to me, he was Malcolm and Martin rolled in one body. But we didn't protect him. And so he ended up, having to be on the run from his own people. Selassie, we didn't protect him. There's a lot of persons we just didn't protect. Sankara, the list goes on and on. We didn't protect our brother in Grenada. Grenada. We didn't protect Gaddafi. And even if you don't like all the stuff Gaddafi did, Gaddafi was somebody who was literally putting in place our own coinage in Africa. So what happens is somebody's willing to pay, right? It's like Baba doctrine. Somebody's willing to pay to take our leaders out. So that's been my prayer for him and for Burkina Faso and all the stuff that's been happening. More so than anything else, it's like, hey, he's on point. He's saying the right things. He even dressed like I don't know if you guys saw the French president tried to like tell him how he's not grateful, and he was like, "How are you gonna tell us we're not grateful for not wanting to say thank you for the slavery and still keeping us in?" Because a lot of people forget France is technically a third world country. The only thing keeping them afloat is the fact that they still force a bunch of African nations with the help of other European nations as well. But they force African nations to have to keep giving them money. And keep giving them some kind of reparations because they lost their slaves. Right. But his response to him was on point too. He has love for his people, even the fact that he's telling so-called African Americans, come on over here, we want you guys to build over here, we'll give you a whole spot for you to build and to learn and grow and to have like your own kind of so-called nation or tribe or whatever. And all that. I'm just praying that he's protected, and those so far so great that those around him have not. They've been offered, like they've sown offers, the person's been offered millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars even to betray him. But so far, everybody is in alignment, and he seems to also know he has to make sure that he takes care of those around him that are right next to him, or else he can easily be betrayed. Maybe he's learned that lesson from others. So he shows a certain amount of love to those that are around him, to where even if somebody were to betray them and they were to become a millionaire, what more could they get than the protection of somebody who loves them? So there's a lot of stuff going on in there that's bigger than just him. But that's my prayer for him, to be honest. I don't know if there's anything he's doing that's unrighteous behind the scenes and all that stuff. So obviously, I'm not Yah, I don't know all that. But as far as just what he's doing overall, I pray for his protection. I prayed for him several times the last couple of weeks. He's always popping up in my stuff. So I love it. And I think that we should take a little bit out of that handbook. We're not ready to do all the stuff he's doing yet, but we should take a little bit out of that playbook and be like, yeah, we do have stuff within ourselves. Yeah, we don't have to do that. Yeah, we don't. So I do think that that's something that's there. No apology necessary. I get it. And thank you for letting me know, because in my head, I didn't catch what it was. But that's what I'm praying for. I pray that he's protected. I pray that we see, yeah, he's right. Like, why are we, the rubber gonna meet the road sooner or later, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And now the tariff thing has made it even shown how quickly some of these things can happen and make things get miserable for persons. And rather than keep going through the same channels to where somebody else can make your life miserable with a stroke of a pen, at some point we're gonna get it where like what we have access to, we are persons that they want to reach out to as well. We have businesses that they want to do stuff with as well, and we should make some determinations for ourselves. We should put some boundaries up. So that being said, shifting back into marriage, all right? We should be connected that much more so. Right, getting back into Genesis 23, right? One of the things that's caused us a lot of grief is that we have to, because of our lack of. I'm gonna say it like this. I don't think persons even catch this. Holy Spirit, have your way, because I've never even said this before, or thought about it this way before, in all honesty. So let me give credit where credit is due. Look, and real talk, as far as our community is concerned, I don't think that we realize the damage of lack of marriage and what it's done. Really all over the world, but we're trying to do this kingdom way. So I'm going to talk about kingdom since my common sense. The lack of marriage in our community has been astounding and what it's done, right? Because I don't think persons realize that marriage is the building block of community. It's the building block, like literally, for us, sex is marriage, marriage is sex. So children don't even get here without marriage. If you go deeper, it's hard to have a community exist. The Most High says He wants to be married to you, and we're not even making sure that our marriages to each other are to us. The world, the remnant that's left in the world trying to get out, etc. Those who be grafted in, those who finally start being Israel that we're called to be. How you doing, Brother Kevin? The world, how you doing, Sister Silver? The world, the system. If you want to get out that system, you have to come into the system of marriage. First of all, with the Most High, right? But then secondly, yes, even our marriages. And what's happened is that we've separated marriage from marriage when we separated sex from marriage. Right? In other words, we separated the spiritual aspect of marriage from the physical aspect of marriage. And now we're trying to figure out why we've lost the soul of marriage. Right? Spirit, body, soul. Right? I'm going to try to say it again. We lost a lot of power that we have when we tried to separate marriage from marriage. Or in other words, the spiritual marriage from the physical marriage and from sex. And so when we separated the spiritual marriage from the physical marriage, we're trying to figure out now why we've lost the soul of marriage. Right? When we lost the ability, when we started teaching, because we weren't even teaching it. We were forced into and stuff like that, but then we started teaching, right? We got okay with the language of our oppressors. And we started telling everybody that, you know, what our oppressors said and what they forced us into was bad, and what their culture did was all right. But the reality is that we separated the spiritual marriage from the physical marriage. So once we did that, now the soul of marriage is lost. Shalom. This is why a whole bunch of men say that they don't want to be married. However, they want wives to show up and take care of them. See, there's the death. Just like there was the death of Sarah with Abraham, there's been a death of what a wife truly means, and really what a husband truly means, but the institution of marriage. Like, you know, if marriage is an institution, that means one must first be institutionalized. Can somebody do me a favor? Can somebody look up the definition of institution, and then can somebody look up the definition of institutionalized? I know there's going to be a few definitions that pop up, but can somebody look up? I just want to do a little test. As many persons want to do it, feel free. If you're able, right? I know that some of us are busy doing different things. Don't get in trouble, okay? Or don't take your eye off the babies or whatever you're doing, right? Don't take your eye off the spouse, whatever you're doing, right? But can somebody look up the definition real quick? I don't care what definition you look for, right? The definition of institution and the definition of institutionalized. And if you can put them in the chat. I want to see something real quick. Because marriage is an institution. Matter of fact, can somebody do this? I don't. Whoever wants to, I'll assign. I guess anybody willing to take an assignment. If you say yes, then I'll just have you, one person, do this, and everybody else can look somewhere else. Is anybody willing to take on an assignment real quick? Anybody got time to look up a specific place I'm gonna send you to online to look at the definition? Can anybody do that? Just no maybe so. Can you do the signal again? Well, if somebody can hear me, I don't know. But if somebody's able to, okay, Sister Mignon, you got it. Can you look up? I would like you to look up the legal definition. Oh, okay. Well, babe, if you'd like to look it up, sorry, I saw Sister Mignon first. Or maybe, Sister Mignon, can you look up the legal definition of institution? And maybe, baby, you can look up the legal definition of institution. Oh, okay, institution line. Okay, but I want to see, because once again, if we're talking about marriage as an institution, one must be institutionalized, right? And so persons that aren't institutionalized concerning marriage, then the institution will never make sense to you, right? I want to see what we come up with. How you doing, Miguel? Is anybody else besides that definition? Okay, so institution, a society or organization. See? Okay, right? And by the way, it's a noun, right? So it's not institutionalized as the verb, but the noun is institution. So you have to be part of a society or an organization or even a family, which is part of the society. In other words, for you to look at an institution of marriage, marriage is community. What your husband and wife what you as a husband and wife got going on, that is your institution. But what you have going on within Israel, that is now our institution. So if you're in our institution called Israel, if you're in our institution called Kingdom, if you're in your husband's institution called Radam, right, then guess what? You were invited or called to, you were invited to whatever that institution or society or kingdom demands from its sovereigns that are in it, including how you are married, how you are a mother, how you are a father, how you are a husband, how you are a wife, how you interact with others, how faithful you should be, all of those. Come on. All right. Sister Mignon, you got so this is the legal definition. Okay? And then my wife has the legal definition of institution. All right, here we go. So institution, as far as the legal definition, so we're talking about law now, is a significant practice or system within a society that is governed by law. Oh man, I'm loving this. I'm loving this. Okay. And then, okay, and I'm gonna come to Elder Allen has the definition for that, for institutionalized legal definition. All right. So watch this. Watch this. You ready? So if you're in an institution, or if you're in an institution of marriage, okay, the institution of marriage, or an institution period, is defined as a significant practice or system within a society that is governed by law. So if one doesn't believe in the law, can one be married? I'm coming right back to you, babe. We gotta catch it. Somebody, see, person don't like when you talk like this. Amen. No. If you don't believe in law, then you can't have an institution. Look, you can't get married under any preacher, judge, whatever, unless they are under an institution. Even in your private marriage has to honor an institution. Oh my God. Right? So if there is no law, the institution has to be within something considered to be lawful, considered to be contractual, considered to be covenant. If you're part of something and say there's no covenant, then there is no institution. If you're part of something and they say we don't believe in the law, this is why I said you got to be careful. The same ordained, licensed, etc. preachers that are out here that will marry you, that say that they don't believe in the law, cannot even be ordained to marry you unless they get ordained by the state. If the state doesn't say that you are an institution within our society, then they're not allowed to marry you. You see that? But somebody will tell you, I don't believe in the law, while then going to the state, not the kingdom, but the state, and saying, hey, will you allow me to go ahead and perform what you declare the institution of marriage is? When something like that happens, we got to ask ourselves, can we trust these persons? This is what they're teaching us, and thank you for the love, man. This is what they're teaching you and I. It's something that's supposed to be established. Established. By the way, established, same word we just talking about French and English, right? Same ballpark, right? But you can't sit there and say these things or whatever, and you're talking about these things and you don't have an institute, right? You can't have an institution of marriage and there's no law. You can't have an institution of marriage and there is no law. Right? So I'm just saying, if somebody were to go and they say they want to get married and the judge says I'll marry you, the judge has to be allowed by the state, by the law, to perform what the state says marriage is as an institution. All right? Now let's go back to Elder Alma. She had the other part of it as far as institutionalized. This is a legal definition. What's the legal definition of being institutionalized? Oh, this is being placed in a hospital, a prison, etc. is a legal definition of being institutionalized. Why? Watch this. What is a hospital? What is a prison? What is it? Whether private or public, what is it's considered by law to be what? Yeah, the judge has to have jurisdiction. Right, come on. It's considered by law to be an institution. So if the law says that it's an institution, then anybody who goes in there is allowed to be institutionalized according to what the law requires out of its institution. That's right. If you go to a school, right? When we went to school, the school is an institution according to the law. That's why there are certain things that you are supposed to get no matter what. Black, white, whatever. That's why even no matter how racist stuff is, somebody will lose a case if they're doing something to a black child that with a certain veracity, no matter how they feel about that black child. Why? Because all we got to do is show, according to the law of the society, they require that this is an institution, and if you run this type of institution, you must meet these type of requirements, right? That's why you're supposed to learn law. Don't learn feelings before you learn law. Well, I guess be in tune with your feelings, but you get what I'm saying. A lot of persons, you go to court, they send you to court, they send you all over the place. A lot of you, when you travel all over the place, you end up going to a court of law and all this stuff. And what do? You go in there with your feelings. Your Honor, blah, blah, blah. Your Honor don't care about that. Your Honor is there governed by the law. This is why when we had the sister, and everybody was like, oh, see, she's going to go into your government, and she's going to go into the federal, she's going to go into the Supreme Court, and she's going to change everything up. No, she's not. She's governed by the law. Whatever she's doing is dealing with the institution. If you're going to be in that institution, the society has already demanded by law that that's an institution and what that institution is allowed to do. Once you're in the institution, you're institutionalized, but you're still institutionalized within the ultimate governance of the society. Does that make sense? I know I said institution and institutionalized a lot, right? But prayerfully what I'm saying makes sense. It don't matter how you feel, right? Feelings matter, but not in the court of law. Right? Hey, Shalom, how you doing? You got to do better than that. I mean, cats be on here calling me the N-word and all types of stuff or whatever. And you talking to somebody who's literally traveling across country and all that stuff where they're trying to tell me about being homeless. Whatever. Right? But that's your way of saying hello. You know, you might want to step the game up. But anyway, right? Like, you got to think to yourself, institution. In order to be institutionalized, I've got to be in an institution. The institution doesn't exist unless it's connected to a family, a community, a society, a nation. That nation has laws, statutes, requirements. So if I don't know the laws of the country, I definitely won't be able to get into the institution and be institutionalized, because I can only be institutionalized from within the society. Marriage is an institution. Right? That's why the prisoner is institutionalized. When I went to prison, right, praise God, I've gotten out of this. I can't recall it anymore. I wasn't there as long as others are either. But you know, like for example, we went to, I've been to prison myself, but we went to Alcatraz. Right? We went to Alcatraz, and we went to visit. And when we went out to Alcatraz, you hear, you know, we went through a thing where you actually can hear the person's testimonies of persons who were actually there and stuff as you walk around and everything. And it's kind of even like creepy and stuff, but they tell you certain things. And, you know, I kind of teared up a little bit a couple spots because I could remember what it felt like. You know, you coming in and being stripped naked and then all these other things. And they were talking about how you could be next to somebody who was a cold-blooded killer and all this stuff. And all the different things, but you were hearing other stuff got my attention and stuff. But I was reminded, being in that institution, or at least that former institution, right now it's been institutionalized and they're making money off the suffering and the spirits and all that stuff the person went through and everything. Right? And of course now somebody's going to play the music and sound positive where I am. At least it's a song, I guess. Even though it's not the version of it. Alright, here we go. But anyways, the institution. Right? The institution, you can hear everybody's testimony and then being institutionalized. And you can hear how they were talking about, how you doing, Darius, how they were talking about being broken down, and how persons, we went outside and we saw, you know, the little area that they had to go outside for their hour a day, you know, usually at the most they would get. We saw the hole and stuff that they were in. I didn't go inside it because I didn't need to go inside another prison cell. If I don't have to go inside another one the rest of my life, I'm okay with it. You know, but I did look at it from the outside. I've been in the hole in other places. I've been in the hole even in slave quarters and stuff like that over in West Africa and stuff. But I didn't need to see another one. But that being said, You know, you can see a lot of stuff, and you can see the institution. And those who were in there long enough, what happens is you become institutionalized. So those persons who leave, you never leave prison. I'm just trying to tell you, right? Sororities and fraternities as well, too, right? But those persons who leave prison, right? You said you're not going back. Yeah, I hear you. Those persons who leave prison, there's a part of you. Like I've lost the ability. I'm thankful for this. I don't remember my number anymore. But when I got in, very quickly it's put to you. No matter how much you want to fight it, your name is not Kofi. Your name is. Matter of fact, you don't have a name. Your number is. Your inmate. I don't recall my number anymore. Praise God. There's a lot of persons who will never forget their number. Right? They will always be a number in that institution because they've been institutionalized. Right? Some of us will never forget our Social Security numbers. Why? Because you are a number in the institute. That's because you've been institutionalized. Dehumanized? True. Still institutionalized. Right? Some of you will never forget that lock code that you have that you use when you go to the gym. Why? Because the gym is an institution. One of the things you do to protect yourself in the institution is get yourself a lock. Why should you have to protect yourself? Well, because somebody can steal your stuff. You're in a place where you can't trust others. Institutionalized. We don't think about that as being an institution, but it's an institution. When you go to school, some of you still, no matter how old you get, you can recall what the school bell sounds like. If you haven't gone to school for 55 years and were to show up in the school to visit a child, and you were to hear a school bell, matter of fact, your first response would be to stop. Even if you pause for a second, you would pause for a second because you would go right back to a place to where I'm supposed to go somewhere. You still remember your lunch number? There you go, right? Like some of you, it's institutionalized. And so that's how important it is marriage. Marriage is supposed to be that institutionalized. You said you had a friend who became institutionalized and he's like unrecognizable. He's more comfortable in jail or rehab. Yeah. This is something, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. There was an argument going on and I was trying to tell the person like, hey, stop tripping on all that blah blah and talking about this or that or whatever. Like, you know, because a lot of our men will go on this thing where it's like, man, you know what, F all this. It's better if I just go back to jail. It's better if I just go back to prison. At least over there, I got 3 square meals a day. And it's not, I was like, so you want to be locked up and be an animal, right? And be treated like a slave. I was like, you know, even when you get into the system, you're supposed to keep a free mind. I was like, that's how you make it through, is that your mind stays free. That's why you go to the library. That's why you look for the newspapers that sometimes be 6 months old. You know, like literally when I first got in prison, I read newspapers. I was like, wait a minute. And I looked at the dates. I was like, oh, this stuff happened 6, 7, 8 months ago. And they just getting the stuff in now. I know, Sister Sabrina, right? So even in the institution, how do you make it through the institution of prison is to make sure that you keep a free mind. And I'm trying to tell the person, you're so busy about this and that or whatever, get your anger under control. You don't want to go back to the institution. But that's an institutionalized mind. To say, it's better that I go back and be in prison. No, it's not, it's never. It can feel that way at times, but it's never great to just go back to being a slave. Being nothing but a number. I see you, Brother Greg. Right? But some of us will go back. Some of us will leave Yah's institution. Because in the moment, it's hard being married. Yeah, it's not always easy. It's hard giving up myself. Yeah, that's not easy. You're not yourself. You're not two. You're two who are becoming one. And the more one you become, that means you shed off some of that skin. You know, the snake grows, right? The lizard grows, but right the lizard grows because they shed the skin. And you know when the snake sheds the skin, it doesn't necessarily hurt, at least as far as we would know as human beings. But we know it's irritating. But if you're going to grow, you got to be irritated. And you talk about lobsters or crabs, and they get rid of these exoskeletons. right? It's irritating. They start to move and they start to vibrate even at a certain frequency. Or if you're a bigger animal, you start to even try to manipulate. Matter of fact, if you look at eagles, you know, eagles shed. Eagles go through several times in their life to where they're going to get older. They have to become weaker and frail, and they have to hurt. They have to build a nest somewhere and hide themselves from anybody. And they have to literally shed their talons. They have to shed their beaks. They have to shed their feathers. But if they don't do this, then they won't grow. Growth in marriage is difficult. And it's not something that necessarily you want, per se, but it's something you need. See, I'm talking kingdom sense, not common sense. I know some person's gonna tune out when I start talking like this. It is what it is, right? I need you to hear me on this. Look, I need my wife. You talking about marriage? If you're married to Yah, do you need him? We talking about the standard. Do you need? For this cause, would a man leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife? I need my wife more than I need my mother and father. I needed my mother and father in the season, and don't get it twisted. I'll forever honor them and love them, but I don't need my mother and father, right, as much as I need my wife. This Bible. For this cause, would a husband leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife? Okay, so Yah says that you need me and I need you. Now somebody says he doesn't need us. If you are his wife, he needs you to make sure that what he has implanted in you is manifested through you. That's how he's created you. And we don't like to hear that because you're so busy thinking that you're unneeded, you're what a worthless worm am I, all this other stuff or whatever. But Yah needs you. He created it that you need him and he needs you. That's how he created it. You don't have to like it. I'm just telling you, I'm giving you contextual facts. You don't have to like it. I'm telling you the truth. Now, because I don't know what time it is. I've got two devices, and one device says 1 hour. One device says it's 7:54 or 9:54 or something like that. The other one saying it's 8:54. So I'm not sure. What time is it on the East Coast? Somebody please. Is it coming up on 10 or is it coming up on 11? Because 11 we got to stop. I'm assuming it's coming up on 10. Am I correct in that? If not, we'll move accordingly. The 9:55? Okay, thank you. All right, because I was sitting up here. I said, what's going on? Okay, great job. So, and we brought it on that much further anyway, so prayerfully you got the gist of what we're talking about today, right? Like, we have to make sure that we recognize that we need each other. This is one of the things that marriage teaches us, or have context and concept of marriage. Concept being one with the idea. If you're one with the idea or the institution, if you've been institutionalized properly as far as marriage, even if you don't have a physical husband or a physical wife, it doesn't mean that you're not aware that we need each other. This ain't even a want thing, because Yahweh is our shepherd. We shall not want. This ain't even about what you want. This ain't about coveting. This isn't about getting something that's not even for you. You know, a lot of times what you do is you compare your relationships to others that aren't even kingdom relationships. Well, you know, in their relationship, they do this every Tuesday. Well, you know, in their relationship, they do this, blah, blah. Well, you know, in their relationship, they call, blah, blah. And you know, in their relationship, they dance, blah, blah. Okay, cool. What about what Yah has called for you? And being institutionalized in this. See, you should be saying, you know what, when Yah, or when Yehoshua and his bride communicate, when Yehoshua did this, when Yehoshua was willing to give his life, and the bride is willing to do this, and the bride is willing to, you should be looking at it in that context. We need each other. We need each other. And you would think that that's like really easy logic. You would think so. So you're the one that gave a better insult, but you wanted me to answer a question or something? Okay, let's look at this. We were given, so I guess you mean we were given the option to praise God. You wouldn't want to create something to make it love you that's empty. We were given the option. So first of all, I worship God. God is a Germanic term that means you can make whatever you want. In the original is Elohim, which we call Elohim. So when you talk about God, you're already talking about a very Eurocentric, Christio fabricated context of what the original text would say, right? But that being said, we were, and I think you really, so the way you wrote it is hard for me to get, because you said we were given the option to praise Elohim. You wouldn't want to create something and make it love you. That's empty. We were? No, I mean, that's fine. You made a mistake when you first came in here talking bad about me and trolling. That was the first mistake. But that being said, you're forgiven, because if I hadn't forgiven it, you could have easily been blocked, right? But we don't have to pretend that you came in under some false pretense that you were actually coming to show love and not even have a conversation, a dialogue about true love. Because as I had said before you came on, or maybe when you first came on, how can you say that you love or love the Most High who you've never seen, but you treat persons who are next to you or virtually even like garbage, right? So your thought process concerning stuff I can see are institutionalized by something that's kind of a falsehood. No, yeah, I know you're a little bit in trouble. That's what I'm treating you as. But that being said, right, and then I'll leave you to control your behavior because you just want responses. But that being said, for somebody who actually cares, we are not in a position, if we're talking about so put it like this, I've been institutionalized. Right? The love that I have for my wife should show that I'm in an institution. If I'm institutionalized at the kingdom of heaven, it should be very clear, right? Some of you would call it brainwashing. Hey, if you want to say that my brain has been cleaned of nonsensical, dirty, or unlawful rhetoric that hasn't caused anything to my society other than for us to continue to live a williness lifestyle and lift up the mindset of an oppressor that doesn't even care enough about our community to make sure that we develop strong marriages to the point to where they literally have created laws in the books to say that they won't help our mothers of our children unless the fathers don't live with them. If that makes me brainwashed or something different or simple in somebody's mind or something like that, then let it be. For those of us who actually care, let it be. Let it be done unto me. I'm on. Amen. I mean, I share, etc. I'd rather be that, right? So the person who comes on and has a mindset of something else different, you know what? I was going to say, for lack of a better word, but I'm going to just tell the truth. Somebody who comes on with a different mindset than that is a fool. It's a fool. It's foolish behavior. That one would get into a marriage and not realize that you need the other person and that you are responsible for the other person's needs. It makes you a fool. And that's where a lot of persons in this world who are still trying to do the date and stuff and doing all these things or whatever, they haven't gotten it. They haven't seen. They really haven't gotten it in their heads that you are a fool. Where you're trying to get into a relationship with persons, and you're trying to have these relationships. You're trying to have families, communities, without believing that you truly need each other. And why I have to say each other once again is because what I'm saying is I need my wife. So guess what that also means? If we're both forsaking all others, I need my wife because there's no other person I can come to like my wife. That means vice versa, she needs her husband because there's nobody she can come to like her husband. I didn't say we can't talk to anybody else ever. I didn't say that we can't sit down and elaborate. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have any counseling or coaching or anything like that. What I'm saying is that we need each other. That's the building blocks of the nation that comes out of Solomon. Our legacy starts with how much we need each other and how much we fulfill those needs. If your mindset of marriage is still only based upon how much you want the other person, you're going to miss a lot. How you doing, one who whispers? How you doing, Minister Bruce? Did you catch that? Once again, Muhammad is my shepherd, I shall not want. Want means to lack. Yeah, for real. Marriage is not for the weak. And by the way, even if you are weak in certain areas where you are weak, Yahweh is strong. But I can't lift, he can lift. I got a spotter called Yah. So husbands, when you say, I can't lift anymore, stop. If you're lifting by yourself, get off the bench you're on and go sit at the bench that Yah's been at, telling you I'm ready to help you out. Or invite him, call him into your life so that he can help you to lift the sisters. If you're like, I can't lift this too much, this and that or whatever, and I know this can be an oversimplification. I get that, right? There's obviously nooks and crannies, but hear me, sisters. I know emotionally I can't take anymore. I can't do this. I can't lift another thing. I can't have enough. I got so much stuff on my plate. Have you made sure that you've gone to Yah and asked him to spot you? Matter of fact, now this is when the institution, right, those who are institutionalized, stop looking out for others who aren't in the institution. See, watch this. Have you ever gone, the Bible says that the elder wives, in Titus chapter 2, the elder wives should teach the younger wives how to love their husbands. If you're a younger wife, have you gone to the older wives and said, hey, how do I love my husband? Have you? Look, I'll look up something on YouTube in a heartbeat. I'll look up something online in a heartbeat. I'll go to the library in a heartbeat. I get those things, right? But real talk. Also, every once in a while, it's all right for me to go to an older brother in Christ and say, yo, I need some help in this thing called husbandry. How did you deal with it? How have you seen? What prayers did you have to say? How close were you to giving up? It felt like were you close to giving up at any time? Am I wrong that I've had this stuff that would make me bad? Like, not giving up, because I'm not that person to just give up on the marriage per se. But, I've given up on maybe, husbands don't feel heard, or husbands don't blah, blah, right? As a wife, have you gone to the elder sisters and said, hey, you know what? He ain't listening to nothing I gotta say. Hey, he telling me to do all this stuff around the house, but he ain't doing nothing. Hey, he's always talking about he's not respected, but he ain't hearing the word I gotta say. Have you gone to not the elders, but the elder wives? I know y'all don't want to hear that, right? Y'all get twisted. Not the elder man, the elder husband. Not even the elder husband, but the elder kingdom husband. Not the elder woman, not the elder wife even, but the elder kingdom wife. Have you gone to them and said, hey, according to what you've lived in longer than I, in this law, in this institution, we both being institutionalized, tell me how you made it and stayed in the institution. How did the institution cover? How does the institution cover? It's like when you got your job, right? If you're working at a job, does it make sense to talk to somebody who's never had a job so you can figure out 401k or whatever whatever you're going to do to get your money when you retire? Or do you go to HR? Or do you go to somebody who's worked in the same business you're in for 27 years and say, hey, you almost on your way out. How did you put your stuff together so that your retirement plan was set? You got 5 children. I only got 2. Can you tell me how you did it? Or does it make sense to go to a teenage girl or a teenage boy who ain't never worked a day in your life and say, hey, teach me about retirement? And before somebody says, oh, well, teenagers couldn't, come on, stay with me now, right? That can't happen where you have a teenager that knows how to retire before they even had a job, or never even had to have a job and they got a business. But let's be honest, that's not the norm. You usually look for somebody that's in the institution. If you're going to be in the institution for 20 years and somebody's already been in the institution for 20 years, then look to see how the institutionalized individual made it through. He said with the foundation and center of the marriage, being on time, move throughout regardless of circumstances. Yeah. And a lot of cats don't get that, they don't receive it, they don't even want it. But once again, that's why we look at the definition, the lawful legal definition of institution and institutionalized. Right? An institution can only come through a society that is led by law. And one of the reasons why we're failing and we're not becoming Abraham and Sarah's in marriage, and we're not making sure that we're having Isaac and promises raised in marriage, right? And therefore we're not having Isaacs that are looking for wives and the wives looking for husbands, and therefore two becoming one allows somebody to come out of their depression. The reason why marriages don't do what it's supposed to is because we're not in the institution. We've separated the physical, the sex, from the spiritual, and now the soul is gone. The psychology of it is gone, right? It was a free-for-all. And I said this earlier, but we'll end here, right? I don't have much more to add for today. Thank you for being on. Thanks for dealing with all the signal issues and all that today as well. I'll just add this one, and we'll be finished for today, or at least until the evening session. The reason. So once you separate the physical part of the marriage from the spiritual part of the marriage, you've lost the soul. You've lost the psychology of it. That's how Corey Holcomb is out here telling all y'all men, right? That and all you women. Some of you women falling for it just as hard as the men. That you need to be okay with realizing that you're nothing outside of how much money a man makes, and he should be able to treat you however. And successful men, all successful men cheat and this and that or whatever. That's of a certain culture, right? I'm not looking for a Hollywood culture to teach me about manhood, about husbandry. How you doing, Brother Allen? I'm not. And persons who are bringing this stuff in, right? That's not in my culture. It is. I'm not keeping that. That's right. Sisters, we shouldn't be looking to sisters who are telling you that, you know, if a man don't make $250,000 and pay all your bills and and this and that or whatever, you know, he's worthless to begin with. Because there's a man out there that makes $250,000 and make your life miserable, maybe even take your life. That ain't got nothing to do with nothing. Not in the kingdom, not in the institution that we have in our society. That's why, once again, in order for one to be in the institution, if you've been there long enough, we should see some signs that you've been institutionalized. Right? What's that song? What's the lyrics? Forgive me, my voice is not whatever. It's not that great either anyways, but what is it? I remember when I lost my mind, right? What's he said? There was something so pleasant about that place. When he says that, he's saying I'm crazy already, and then later on he says, another verse, he says, maybe you're crazy, maybe you're crazy just like me. Why? Because crazy no crazy. If I'm in the institution, right? If I'm on the fourth floor, I've been there, done that too. If you're on the fourth floor of the hospital and you see some stuff around you institutionalized, you can't really talk with so much smack because you're in the same place everybody else is. My crazy might not look like you're crazy, but I recognize crazy. That's what he's saying. It's like, that's what, when he gets to that verse that he says that, he's saying, look, I'm just keep it a bug with you. I might be telling you crazy. Right? Even in the part, I don't think person catch the last part when he's like, what's that? My heroes and I to live the life I want. It's either live the life I want to live or life out on the limb, something like that. And I remember thinking I'm going to be like them, right? They were considered to be crazy. My heroes were considered to be crazy. So when I got to a certain level in the institution, I looked up not to those who were sane, but I looked up to those who were considered to be crazy. That's what he's saying there. That's a bar. Those are bars, by the way. But that's what he's saying. It gets to a place where he's like, yeah, you know what? Malcolm was considered to be crazy. Martin was considered to be crazy. Still are by many persons, right? John McClane, who was more respectful than many cats. John McClane and others in Arizona were making sure that in the 1990s and 1980s and stuff like that, that you weren't going to have no Martin Luther King Jr. born day, no birthday, no birthday celebration, no holidays about him. George Washington could do whatever he does to us, and you better worship him. But, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. sheds blood for us, and you go ahead and push him to the side. But CeeLo Green, when he's singing those lyrics, right? My heroes had the heart to live their life out on a limb, or live the life I want to live. And I remember thinking, I want to be like them, right? Like he's saying, I'm institutionalized by a certain society. And so in that society, what they would consider to be crazy is something that I look up to. I want to be that. I remember, matter of fact, it says I remember thinking I want to be like them. So it doesn't even mean that he became them. That's the crazy part about it too. It's bars. Right? But that's the crazy part about what he's saying too, is that he's saying, hey, I remember there was a time that I actually wanted to be crazy. How you doing, Radio Prince? How you doing, Dennis? What he's saying is, I recall there was actually a time to where I didn't want to be appropriate, because appropriate means somebody had to take what I was. So your normal is considered crazy and stuff. Well, yeah, like, even if we're talking about, like, biblical, right? Kingdom of heaven, that's one of the things there. It says a peculiar people. If you look at that term, peculiar people, people means nation, and then peculiar, you don't fit in, right? We said last night, what is it? Some of you are too busy fitting in. You said it in mind the business, for those who don't know. Yeah, but I'm just saying, to be honest, persons won't mind your business. We're going to live kingdom publicly, unfortunately. There are certain things that aren't your business. I get what you mean. I'm just saying in general, right? That there are persons that are going, my marriage is on display. Doesn't mean that everybody has to know every nook and cranny of marriage and stuff like that. There's certain things that isn't your business, and I'll tell you that. With that being said, it's on display. Right? If I go visit somewhere, guess who's going to be there with me? My wife. Right? When you see Solomon being raised, guess how you're going to see him raised? Right? When we choose a wife for him, right? When we choose his wife, guess that's going to be something that we're going to determine together. When SOC moves, that's something we do together. Right? So what I'm saying ultimately is the importance of marriage. Here in Genesis 23, if we're not careful, we just go Sarah passed away. Okay, cool, let's go to Genesis 24. No, like, this really affects Abraham. This really affects him, because his wife is himself. A part of himself is gone. So choose wisely. After all that stuff we talked about today, choose wisely. It's part of our culture from the beginning, from Barashayat. This has been a huge part of everything you've seen as husband and wife. We even talked about Naam's wife, right? And Naamah, right? And Jasher and things like that. Like, it's a huge part. Every time you hear a name mentioned, somebody's spouse is mentioned with it. If it says so-and-so begot so-and-so, we know men ain't birthing no babies. So if he begot it, it's only because there was a wife who he was one with that helped him to multiply what he couldn't multiply just from within himself. He has the power of multiplication, but there is an application of it without his wife. You catch that? There's a power application, but there's no, right? But there's a power of multiplication, rather, but there can't be any application of it unless his wife is there, right? Behind every great man is a great black woman, is a great Israelite woman, is a great woman, is a great wife, right? There is no, and that's why I said we have to get to the place of needing each other. Of needing each other. And once we get that part of marriage, see, once again, that's an institution in our society. If you were institutionalized properly with marriage, which is one of the first things you're supposed to be taught in life, we just aren't taught it because we're outside of our society. We're not in our right mind. Like mommy and grandmama used to say for some of us, boy, you ain't in your right mind. What was she saying? What was grandpapa and daddy saying? They were saying, that's not even how you're supposed to think. That's not our culture. And we haven't been in our right mind for a really long time, unfortunately. We haven't been in our right mind, let alone our righteous mind, for a really long time. My father would always say to me, boy, what were you thinking? I used to do some crazy stuff. Repeat which part? I'm sorry, Sister Snap, which part? I think I know, hold on. You talking about, I don't know if I can. The multiplication piece, what was it? That the husband has the power of multiplication in him already. Yeah, he has the power of multiplication in him, but without his wife, there is no application. I think that's what I said. Is that what you're talking about? I believe that's what I was saying, right? That the husband has the power of multiplication in him, but without his wife, there is no application. Sorry to be discussing, but if you don't believe me, put two men together right now and see how much multiplication you get. And don't do the weird thing where it's like, oh, we're going to take a woman and then we're going to give her hormones and she looks like a man, but then we're going to take them away so she can get pregnant, and then we're going to say, look, and you can get pregnant too. No, take two men, right, and put them in a room together and see how multiplication happens. It's not going to happen. It's a lot. If pride is a sin, is it wrong to be a proud parent? So pride, great question. I know we're pretty much finished, but we can go ahead and get into that. How you doing, Mindful Moments? My body, I'm trying to look up a specific. Well, give me a second. Well, I don't want to do that because I'm gonna lose y'all. Well, YouTube, give me like 20 seconds. I'll be right back. So pride, having pride in your children. So this is the difference. Sorry, YouTube. Hopefully you back up with this. I just wanted to double check the word in Hebrew. It's basically, so pride is when we talk about pride. Pride is, the word basically means to exalt. It's not exactly what somebody thinks about in English, right? Or in our modern languages or modern thought process, right? Because we haven't been institutionalized with even the institution of our language and culture. So there's a lot of things missing in that. But they're not talking about pride only as far as, they're talking about exalting. Now, it's kind of like when somebody says consequences, right? Consequences, we usually just think about the negative side only, but there can be positive or negative consequences. We usually hear love and we think of, oh, love, that's great, it's warm, thing to feel, but somebody can love things that hurt you, right? So somebody can love things that cause you to be disobedient to the Most High. Right, some persons love money or mammon even. Because money's not mammon, but some people have to love money more than love other things, right? So love can be negative, it can be positive, right? Pride is in the same ballpark. The gabachim, or the pride. So it depends on what you're exalting, to exalt, or what you're lifting up, or even how you're lifting something up, right? So pride, being pride in Yahweh is, in essence, to exalt Yahweh, right? You won't really hear that word used for exalting him, but if somebody were to have him, technically we could say if somebody were to gabachin, or to exalt, or to lift up, or to be proud of even Yahweh. Nothing wrong with that. Right? If somebody were even be proud of something that they've done, nothing wrong with that. Right? To lift it up. But to what point? Like for example, somebody built a tower, the Tower of Babel, and they lifted that up and they were proud. They exalted it to the point to where they said it was above Yah. Matter of fact, they were building it to get up to Yah so that they could go ahead and try to beat the brakes off Yah. That was part of their goal. No, we're getting close over there. We're trying to make it through. We're just getting to the border of Texas. So I'm not sure we'll make it there today or not. We're trying to, but we're behind on some stuff. So we're trying our best. We're trying our best. I haven't reached out to you because we literally just got to the border. So we'll see. I'm trying to make it over there. We'll see. We should be able to make it over there because even if we go that route, we should be able to keep going straight through to get to where we're headed. But we're really behind, and we're supposed to be back by a certain date. So I'm already pushing stuff back to make it already, let alone if I try to make it. But we're gonna try. It might have to be something where it's like be there for like an evening and a rising, and you might have to figure out how to come to where we are and something and say, hey, what's up? But we're gonna try. No promises, unfortunately. That's what I'm telling everybody. I can't make the promises. I really want to make it happen. If we can't make it happen, we got the RV and everything now, so we can try to do a makeup somewhere, later on if we need to. But I'm trying to do more than what we did last time, which was going to quick pack up and a quick hug, and then you had to get on the road. But anyway, there's a positive pride and a negative pride, right? And it's about exalting. So if you exalt, like Saul, for example, King Saul, the problem with his pride was that he exalted himself to where he actually didn't care what the Most High had to say. And we know this with King Saul simply because Remember, King Saul was even, the prophet came to King Saul. I don't remember if this is, I don't think if this was Samuel or if this was Nathan. But the prophet came to him and was like, yo, you wild enough. Y'all wants to tell you that you wild. And Saul was like, say it on. In other words, we would say it, and how we would say it nowadays, man, Saul, you tripping. Y'all sent me to tell you. It was Samuel. Okay, thank you. Y'all sent me to tell you, but you tripping. And Saul was like, go ahead, say whatever you need to say. I don't care. That's basically what he said when he said, say on. Like, I don't care about you. I don't care about y'all like that. Like, I'm the king. What you gonna do? Go ahead, tell me your little whatever. Right? That's a level of pride where he started exalting himself to a place where, oh, you think you better than y'all. You think you Malachi over Malachi. Like, you done lost your mind. Right? And that's when he had to, and still, even when y'all left him alone, remember, you have the whole piece with Samuel and then divide David. And David is made to be king. He's ordained, but he's not actually king yet. If you recall how that worked, he still was king for 38 more years. He was king 40 years total. In the second year, that's when y'all said, you finished. But yet, he still sat on the throne. So even in Saul's mind, right, having every opportunity to possibly get it together, even in Saul's mind, he's like, well, ain't nobody done nothing to me yet. Even though he felt vexed, even though he's going through a lot of stuff, even though he's feeling more separated, even though he sees David is having more success than he is, in his mind, he still couldn't, he was so proud of himself. He was so exalting himself so high that now it got into a place of where, who were you worshiping? You worshiping Yah, you worshiping you. You obviously ain't worshiping Yah. Right? If you recall, he was supposed to leave certain things alone. Wipe out everybody, wipe out the men, the women, the children, don't take nothing. These persons are evil, everything attached to them are evil. Let Yah sort it out in the end. And he goes in and he makes sure he keeps some stuff for himself. Right? You're going to bust. See, that's when that's pride. We don't even consider that to be pride, but that's pride as far as what we would define pride as, what Yah defines it as. That's actually pride. Where like Yah tells you to do something, you know better, but you go, you know what he really gonna do? And hey, I did 98% of it, who cares about this 2%? That's when you start getting to a place of what we would call pride. So pride is looked at a little differently. It's very similar, but it's looked at a little differently. Right? We could say that there's positive and negative pride, just as there's positive and negative consequences, there's positive and negative love, there's positive and negative feelings, etc., right? But he had a pride where he said, I'm more important. Right? Like, I'm proud to say that I belong to Yah. I'm proud to say that he is my Lord, my Savior, my Master, etc. But there's some cats who are like, there's a sense of pride. Even the pride starts lending itself to foolishness, right? Because the fear of Yahweh is the beginning, or the reverence, the respect for Yahweh is the beginning of all wisdom, right? Or really, some versions even say the beginning of everything else. So many persons are in a place, and thank you for the love, many persons are in a place of pride where they exalt themselves. This is why I tell persons all the time, I'm not trying to be right, I'm trying to be righteous. I could be right a lot. I know how to make my words work for me. I know how to even manipulate words if I want to always be right. I'm not trying to be right, I'm trying to be righteous. The second that I put my being right before my being righteous is the second that I'm proud. I think that's actually a pretty decent working definition. See your brother Jamie and you're doing the show at Silverfest in Houston tomorrow. Okay. Right? But I think that's a pretty great working definition, at least for me. The second that I've decided that I don't care about what righteousness, what the law says, etc., which a lot of persons do, they don't care that the law says this. They say we want the institution of marriage, but you can't have an institution without it being part of a lawful society, right? So if you say there's no law, then how do you have marriage, right? But that being said, somebody says, I want marriage to be whatever I want it to be. That's pride. That's when you exalt yourself. You don't want to be righteous, you want to be right. And then you get upset when you get the result of your being right. You was right, but your marriage wrong. You right though. You got what you wanted, but you didn't get what you need. You right, but you're not righteous. So hopefully that helps. That's a little better, I think, a little better definition of what we used to get. With that being said though, I thank you all. I appreciate you all. Got to get on the road. pray for us. We're excited about what Yahweh is doing in your lives, and hopefully you continue to do great things. So we're going to go ahead and take our leave. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you, babe, for helping me out with the signal. Prayerfully you didn't need it. If so, I'm on my way back now. Then we're going to get on the road. So love y'all. Take care. We will see you this evening for the live session on YouTube and on TikTok, but on Kofi_42, not on Kofi_43. So look for us there. And love y'all to life. You all take care. Have a great day. As always, we give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to Him, to my wife, the Honor, who lives a life that's able to be honored. As always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, our website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, symbologist, botanist by degree. And remember, as always, family, that you are loved. You're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system are longer have to be up. Shalom. If I don't see you by this evening, if you keep Friday as your Shabbat, early Shabbat, early Friday evening and Saturday, early Shabbat Shalom to you all. And if you missed the meeting and stuff like that, especially if you're coming on the trip, make sure that you reach out if you can, just so we can make sure that we know all the numbers and the guaranteed and everything that we need to have is ready for you guys. All right. Love you to life. You all take care. And have an excellent day.